Hi, and today I'm welcoming a fellow Bostonian on the pod. Welcome to Nothing is Rocket Science, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm actually both excited and anxious about today's topics. Maybe not really anxious, but like a mix of curiosity and anxiety, because the topics that we're going to talk about is close to my heart, like women's health and bodies. Um, there's a lot of curiosity. There's a little bit of anxiety, and because there's so much out there, but there's also so much of misinformation. There's a lot of chatter on social media, the mainstream media, politics, comedy. Everybody talks about women's health or women's bodies, but there's also a lot of misinformation, around it. I'm only going to attempt to scratch the surface with you. You are a certified nutritionist. Is that a word, nutritionist?
Yeah. So yes,
Okay.
nutritionists.
Um, So, what got you interested in, women's health, fertility, and then prenatal nutrition? How did you get into this journey of women's bodies, health, and fertility journey?
Amazing. A bit of my background. I have a bachelor's in human biology, so I was always kind of into how the body worked and the scientific field.
Right.
From there, I got into nutrition, so that's what my master's degree is in. And then ever since I graduated, I've been in like human optimization biotech, which is super hot right now. So I've been in that industry for 5 years, and even I would say like 3, 4 years ago, I realized that even with all of that experience, all that education in a pretty scientific body oriented field, I didn't know anything about my own reproductive health, my own fertility. In my late 20s, in a healthy long term relationship, I was like, these are the things you start thinking about when you say, how the heck do I not know about how to support my body, what's coming in this next life phase? So then I started going super deep. Um, and I really wanted to hit this gap of information. So what I ended up learning was so much in general, and I'm still learning every day, but so much that can be used and useful, like from when we're 18, 20 years old. So starting to learn all of this, when you think you want to start having kids, or maybe you're not sure, you're trying to decide, it's not enough time to really set you up for success. So that's why I'm so passionate about getting this information out to people well before they think they need it, because it's your God-given birthright to have this information, and we're just simply not given it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I was reading through some of your blog posts, which I'll be linking, by the way, in the description. We're going to be diving into some of these topics, but I love the transition from, setting the intention and the ancient sciences, or like what ancient wisdom is for women's health, and also your deep dive into. Being off the pill, being on and off the pill, and the whole research that you did with your blood work. I thought that was very meticulous, and I'm like the attention to detail that you had on those blogs were actually fantastic. So I think I would like to start off with the general point of awareness. Like, social media is a petri dish for both awareness and misinformation. This is something that I've been learning. Like, I'm in research as well, in academic research, and the more and more we work on research, the more I'm learning how much of misinformation is out there, even in scientific, like, literature,
Yeah.
right? So it's like at the end of the day, you're like, what's the point of all of this? And I know we've had all those moments, but putting that aside, I agree that there is some merit in some of the hacks and topics around women's health that is being circulated, the articles being written and all that on various platforms. But most times, the conclusions and data shared are flawed, or they are adjusted to suit the result that you want. So in this case, it's very difficult for the public. I don't blame the public because they just read the conclusion and they come to it, because people in science ourselves fail to notice
Yeah.
inaccuracies in data. So given this, as a professional nutritionist and a science communicators, what are some miscommunications and misconceptions about women's health and bodies that you've come across, and how do you address this?
Oh, this is an amazing question. I think we've all hit a wall in the scientific space where you
Mhm.
are searching PubMed and you're trying to do a really good job. And even with research, just because you see something online and they've stuck a PubMed ID at the end of it, you have to be very, very careful, because you can kind of make anything support anything. So
Correlations, right? Yeah.
it's so tough sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's something to this, right? So I would say I love the question about a big misconception. And maybe I would just offer for this a big reframe when it comes to like women's health, reproductive health, that it's something you need to worry about if and when you want to have kids. And the reason I say this is because our reproductive system is the lowest on our body's priority list, meaning, it's your body's going to divert energy and nutrition to the things that are going to keep you alive until tomorrow. So your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your brain, your muscles moving. So when there's any excessive stress on the system, and this doesn't have to just be stress, this is like nutritional deficiencies, this is hormonal imbalances, this is under eating, this is over exercising, if that's the case, these manifest in the reproductive system first. So focusing on your reproductive system, living in a very fertility supportive way, makes everything else fall into place, because it's impossible to have like a healthy and balanced reproductive system without having a healthy and balanced human body. So I would say when you're on social media and you're looking at the things that are really trending, a lot of the foundations are solid. No one's going to tell you you don't need like 8 hours of quality sleep, or you shouldn't eat mostly whole foods, or you shouldn't move every day in at least some capacity. Like, this is generally really solid advice, and it's linked to really good fertility health too. Where it gets a little dicey is everything that kind of extends beyond this. So certain supplements, or even things like, well, actually, cycle syncing, we could have a whole conversation about it. I see the beauty in it. However, I think scientifically, it's maybe not the most robustly supportive, but hey, if something gets you tuning into your body more and starting to strength train if you hadn't, or eating certain vegetables that you hadn't before, like, that's amazing. So the answer is always, it depends.
Mm.
You start seeing blanket statements, or never do this, or always do that. There's also so much power in personalization. So what you respond well to may not be what other people respond well to, or the opposite. Like, what works for other people might not work for you. So we need to be really careful in the interpretation of things, and also remembering that health is an experiment. There's no harm in trying something for a week or two, and if it doesn't work for you, saying that's not for me, then at least you tried.
Right. Yeah, that's especially the point you made about power of personalization. There's not one solution that's for everybody. In
Yeah.
fact, we're going to be talking about that in the in the into the episode where we're talking about how our bodies are different when compared to men, and within women, like when you come from different ethnicities, how our bodies change.
Yes.
But before we jump to the next question, what is a good age to start? Um, because you highlighted the point of how we don't pay attention to reproductive health, or just because somebody doesn't want to have kids, like say 15, 16 year olds. I mean, reproductive health is not something on their minds all the time, maybe.
Right.
But what is a good time to be, even maybe say for a parent, to be conscious, or to get their children get their girls be conscious about reproductive health and the importance of taking care of the hormones and things like that?
Oh, I love it. And I don't know if I have the perfect answer because truly this should be like sex ed material.
Mm-hmm.
So around the age of puberty, and then especially when girls are being put on birth control at the age of like this was I'm not a demonizer of birth control. I think it serves many purposes at many different life phases for different reasons. But I was not told a dang thing about it before I got the pill for 6 years. So there's a huge education gap in terms of like your options. So
Right.
depending on like, if you're presenting with a hormonal issue when you're young, silencing your hormones, it's an option, but it's not the only one. And I was treated like it was. I had super painful periods, really bad hormonal acne, and it was like a no-brainer for my doctor, put her on the pill. And it helped, but really I wish someone had told me there was an option to go deeper. Like there's a root cause here. There's something that you could spend time optimizing, adjusting, learning, improving so that you start to see these symptoms fade without having to take such maybe a drastic step. And then, I did have to ultimately deal with those things 6 years later. Well, actually, I didn't. And I can talk about that because I took so much preventative precaution on getting to the root of hormonal issues, transitioning off of the birth control pill.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's a solution. It's I don't like calling it a solution. I think it's more like a band-aid situation. You just put it
It is.
unless you rip it off, you don't know what's underneath all
Yeah.
that. Right. Um, Speaking of hormones, this is a big topic. Um, I read this statement, I rephrased it, but it says, "Men and women are equal, but they're not the same." Um, I think deep down, we all know this, and it kind of hit like a epiphany for me. But sometimes I was thinking about how, in the name of equality, we've forgotten our biologies. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone here, but and I by no means I mean that one gender is above the other. Men are stronger, women are weaker. No, I don't mean to open that Pandora's box. But I think I'm just taking this opportunity because we have you here to talk about this, and we need to understand how our physiology works, and so that we know what works best as women. Like if there's a way that I can approach a particular solution with the best qualities that I have, so more like equity. So can you tell us a little bit about how men and women are hormonally different and how that affects us physiologically?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the biggest difference is men are like 24-hour creatures on a 24-hour rhythm hormonally. And we have those as well, but we're also on like a 28-day on average menstrual cycle rhythm.
Right.
And these bring the biggest differences, I think, in what you're talking about. So
Mhm.
for us, and I think this is why I see so much excitement around people who are exposed to cycle thinking for the first time, because most of us don't know what the different phases of the menstrual cycle even are. And once you learn, like, oh, there's a reason I feel more energetic now. There's a reason I feel more sluggish here. There's a reason I'm hungrier now. These hormonal, basically the thresholds and then the ratios of them to each other have their own shades of influence on how we feel, how we move, how we want to eat. Um, and we are kind of living in a world built for men. So I love seeing a lot of this, information and empowerment that comes with just tapping in a little bit more. We are, as women, notoriously understudied, underrepresented. So a lot of the health information we see, I've also seen a good quote. It's like, women are not small men.
Right. It's a very profound statement, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more serious. It sounds a little flippant, but it's really serious because in the scientific literature, even in like drug pharmaceutical clinical trials, the same extrapolations like that they find in men, that the data says this works or this doesn't work, is applied to women, even though women did not make up 50% of that study population.
Right.
And we're seeing the detrimental effects of that. So to apply health advice that works for men to women is a huge disservice. Um, and we do see it being talked more about. We see this sort of fear of including women in study participants because of their hormonal fluctuations. There's like this big fear that it's going to mess up data.
Right.
We're seeing that hopefully sort of turn the page, but we have to be very, very careful when taking advice that wasn't truly studied in us or for us.
Right. That's a good point that you made because I remember when we were filling out our IRB forms for our studies, the first thing in the exclusion criteria that you write is pregnant and lactating women. um, I understand the protective clause in the sense they don't want the study to hurt them. I get that aspect, but I don't know, like, how are we going to study? I was also reading about how women athletes,
Mm,
like everything that is, they're just following the advice that's given to men,
yes.
and how much there is a need for women athletes to be part, and especially what happens is the results are changing in when they are in different parts, different phases of their menstrual cycle. And I think that is, you just made the point about how the hormonal changes are going to mess up the data. And do we have information that it's going to mess up the data, or is it something that is just hypothesized?
No, I think that's truly just what the general sentiment was, which is why we didn't see women even included in
Mm.
research or clinical trials for years and years and years. That and when we did, they make an effort to say postmenopausal. Like you
Mm.
actually can find research with postmenopausal women because it's like they're controlled for now,
That's-
hormonally. Yeah. So no, I've seen beautifully designed studies that take the menstrual cycle into account. It's just lazy, truly, and it's
yeah,
maybe that is flippant to say, but it does take effort. It does take testing. It does take an additional layer
right.
of preparation for this study. But that doesn't mean it's not important, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. So,
Yeah. You might come up with results that you never even thought of, and like it'll be a good addition at the end of the study. Yeah. um since we talk about how the hormonal differences are in men and women, how does this affect health, stress, work, or like medical opportunities, when you talk about all of this?
yeah, I mean, probably in more ways than we know, which is kind of scary to say. But when we think about it in terms of the workday, the 9 to 5 is super
Mhm.
set up with this male model. I've read even temperature settings in corporate offices are dialed to the ideal male body temperature. That's why typically women feel colder in
Mm.
office settings. Also, a
Wow.
lot of the cycle syncing information is like there are certain times of the month where you should be pitching. There are certain times of the month where you should be writing. There are certain times of the
Yeah.
month where just the creativity might differ
Right.
in fluctuation with your hormone.
Right.
And I think that's a super cool way to not only sort of rethink this very masculine daily rhythm that we're all used to and tap more into that feminine creativity side. And now I'm maybe moving a bit more away from the biology and more into the, what do you feel like doing today? Uh,
Mm.
I think that's my favorite takeaway of a lot of the health information is listen to your body. What's
Mhm.
your body saying? It truly is like the most powerful piece of advice that I've leaned into the last few years, and it's where I've seen the most growth in my own health. Is just
Mm.
really taking that extra minute, extra few times a day to really really understand what's going on internally.
Hmm. um I tried doing this cycle thinking thing. Tried to. It's just that because I work in a traditional work environment
Yeah.
with this 9 to 5, and it's difficult to accommodate stuff which are not in my control.
Yes.
But I feel like, um I set up my personal interests and my activities that I do for like fun or like my writing and stuff. I try to schedule, but not that I noticed a drastic difference, but there was something there. Like there is something, and
Yes.
I think it takes a little bit of a detail to actually to understand and pick those effects, and maybe you'll have to keep doing it more often. But you're totally right about um, listening to your bodies, because I think it's the body is communicating. It's just that we have not been listening to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and like once I started paying attention to that, I felt like I had information about like very small things in life. Like
Yeah.
it could just be, hey, drink that extra glass of water, or maybe you should just grab that banana before you go out. And I was like, wow, okay, where was all this? Like, why
Yeah.
was I paying attention to this before?
I
Um,
love that. No, that's true. They say that like intuition too. If you
right,
don't listen to it for so long, you forget it's there. And then once you start, it's kind of like, oh shoot, this
exactly,
would have helped.
exactly. It's not like it doesn't have to be something big. It
No,
could just be as simple as, hey, just take that umbrella just in case. It could be as simple as that.
totally.
Um, how is this affecting like I well, we can't go around and change the work structure, and we can't go around and change other things. And when it comes to medical and health related stuff, like we were talking about how studies and like even pharmaceutical treatments are all just designed for a male body. um, I was reading this book called In the Flow by Elisa Vitti, and she talks about so many things. And she talks about how this is getting like the symptoms of heart attack. It's like typically chest pain, or facial distortion or something like that. But that's not how it shows up in women, right? Like it shows up as a completely, it apparently shows up as headaches or something. And
Mhm.
women have gone to ER and be like, hey, I've been having this pain here, and they just um they just said, oh, it could just be like a regular headache. And then turns out, and there was somebody else who read a book where it says the symptoms are different, and when she pushed the doctor to do those tests, and that's how she came to know that she actually had a heart attack or something.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
do you think there is a change in medical science where people are, at least the practitioners, or the healthcare professionals, are being made aware of these kind of differences, gender differences? How was that? At least because, okay, some of us are in the profession, so now we know, we are aware that there is a difference and there's something there, but that's not your general audience, right? So um, do you think that the medical field is now doing gender based research and not gender neutral research or gender neutral treatments?
I'd like to say yes. I've seen a lot of innovation in the
Mhm.
women's health field in the past, like just year, I would say. So, for instance, one company that I'll highlight that I think is doing really amazing things is Hera Biotech, and they came out with essentially a non-surgical way to help diagnose endometriosis. Where
Mm.
traditionally, the only way to diagnose endometriosis is through laparoscopic surgery. It takes on average 12 years to get this diagnosis, probably do a lot of things you were just mentioning. And that's in progress right now. So I think in terms of like menstrual products, I see a lot of innovation, a lot of testing at home that people can do if they want to learn more about their hormonal health or their fertility status. I think all that is really great.
Mm.
I won't quote myself too hard on this, but I'm sort of, my algorithm is tuned to that. So I anticipate that I would see a lot of the exciting innovations in women's health. But unfortunately, I did read that in the last 12 months, funding in women's health space has actually gone down instead of gone up, like I think many of us assumed it would. So on an industry level, it is hard to say. From where I sit, things look very promising. There are a lot more people dedicated to getting this information out there, to working on extremely innovative and exciting ways to get women's health on the map, to
Right.
improve it. Yet I will say, when I go to my gynecologist, it is not the most enlightening experience. So there's some work to be done. It's important that people like us
Mm.
talk about it more, like with our friends, with your family, like removing the stigmas around it, getting your moms to talk about menopause. Like, why don't we do that? It's this starts with us too. So that's just, I mean, all my conversations with my close friends, they always end up in like periods, birth control, fertility. So I hope that we just start doing that more as a society.
Normalization of
Yeah.
these words and like not use euphemisms for it anymore. Yeah.
Right.
Mm. That brings me to my next question. How different should a woman's diet and nutrition be, like, in different age groups when compared to men?
So actually, this one I might surprise you. I wouldn't recommend too much of a difference from the fertility lens. And the good thing about a fertility healthy diet is it's the exact same diet that supports optimal function of
Mm.
the human body. So men, not to say we need to bring men into the equation,
Yeah.
but we do, because nutritionally, their movement, their lifestyle, their antioxidant status matters just as much when it comes to having a healthy baby.
Mm.
So much so that 30 to 50% of infertility is due to the male side.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it makes sense. They're half the equation. So,
Right.
they need to be eating diets high in antioxidants too for sperm health and sperm quality. Sperm has like the health of it, the amount of it, the morphology, the motility has decreased like drastically over the last 50 years, so much so that in the last since 1980, the World Health Organization has like slashed the clinically normal guidelines smaller and smaller 4 times
Mm.
for sperm health. So we need men like taking prenatal vitamins when they're trying to conceive. We need men eating high quality protein and seeking out healthy fat sources just as much as we need to uh,
Mhm.
for our own, egg health and overall fertility health, making sure we're ovulating, having hormonal balance. All of that, I would say men and women can take the same advice because
Mhm.
it's beneficial not only for egg and sperm health, but just for overall health too. So men can't get out easy of this one. They need to care too.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like women are more inclined to. It's like it's assumed because women are the one who are carrying.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, prenatal women's, and I think even the products, like even if men want to take, I think there's no uh, awareness that they also need to be doing all of this. Like it's just been the onus is on women. So
Yep.
like, and I don't blame them. They just didn't know that. And also this was something I saw in social media that their genes are responsible for infertility as well. Like I'm familiar with the concept. That's how things work. But like when there's a miscarriage or things like that, again, everything rests on the woman, saying that she didn't take care of herself or she was
Yeah.
not healthy enough. But um, it's very interesting to see the contribution and how it's. I feel like I have to go back to school once again to like go through stuff, but through a different lens. So I'm like, okay, so it's nice in a way because I'm an eternal student now. Uh, but gosh, there's so much of new information out there, and also misinformation, but also like good information out there.
Yes.
Um, Speaking of women's fertility, or which is you know most discussed or judged and stuff, do you think there's an increase in the issues, or is it just that it's being spoken about more openly? The numbers seem to be higher because modern medicine has opened several avenues for women. So like, is there definitely a rise in fertility issues? Because if you just look at these podcasts or everything, people are like, oh, this is like the whole blame game going on.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, this is done. At the same point, I'm also seeing women in their late 30s and 40s are also having children, and women as young as 2021 are also having children with chromosomal defects or any like Down syndrome or anything. So, where is the merit? What is the merit in this?
Oh, it's such a good question, and I think to what you were just saying, there may be no true answer.
Mm,
I think it's a combination of many things.
mm,
One more obvious reason might be because women are in the workforce, and like women like us, we got our degrees, we got these great jobs, and then you hit a point where you're finally at the level that you've worked so hard to be, and you have to make a decision if you
yeah.
want to have a child. Like, do you take a break? Do you try to do both? Like, these are big questions, and also financially, it is not cheap to
Mm,
have. And speaking for being in the US, we do not have
right.
great maternity leave policies, childcare. Like, we don't have a lot of great support that may motivate women and families to have kids. So that's maybe like the social side.
Right.
Logically speaking, I want to say something, and I don't mean it to be fear-mongery,
Right.
but we do live in a modern world that is attacking our bodies, and namely our reproductive system,
Mm-hmm.
mainly through exposures to things like endocrine disrupting chemicals that are in the water we drink, the food we eat, our personal care products, everything like plastic,
Mm,
even mass produced furniture. Like, these are just everywhere. They're impossible to avoid. I don't think anyone should have the goal of removing them entirely, but there are ways we can mitigate these effects and reduce risk ultimately. Also, diet. That's probably one of the bigger ones,
right.
where the Western diet is not conducive to healthy reproduction or healthy metabolism or pretty much healthy anything. And
Mm,
these are all the things that matter when it comes to wanting to have a baby. So
mm,
you sort of have to be on the defense and on the offense. And that's why I encourage, people to care a little earlier, because if you can implement these things years in advance, you benefit from the cumulative benefits.
right.
And a lot of the time, if you're being exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals and you're not doing anything about it, that cumulative effect is working against you.
Right.
So it's just one thing to be super aware of. And there is a lot of power to be had here, like knowing where they lie and how you can easily start to like live in a way where they're less present.
Just conscious living. Yeah.
Conscious, exactly. That's a really nice way to put it. There are absolutely ways to do this. It's just a matter of putting the effort in and maybe learning where they are and what to do about it. But I definitely, that's like maybe the biological piece. And then the last one I would say, you've asked me a lot, and I think it's amazing to bring up the medical field. But another huge issue is coming off of birth control right away and expecting to get pregnant the next cycle. We have data that shows there's a subfertility period after coming off of hormonal contraception. And it's not a bad thing. It's just on average, it takes, I think about 6 months after the contraceptive pill to restore fertility and hormonal flows. It takes about 6 to 8 months after the hormonal IUD, which surprises a lot of people. And then it could take over a year if you had the shot to really restore fertility. So I think a lot of people have the expectation, I'm going to come off the pill, I'm going to flip a switch, and then I'm going to get pregnant. Even for healthy individuals, there's only a 20 to 25% chance of conception every cycle.
Mm,
So, after about 4 months, your chances are pretty good. So if you've just come off of hormonal birth control, if you're not living in a fertility supportive way, you could hit a year without successful conception. And that's when people go to their doctor, their reproductive endocrinologist. And where I think we're missing a huge portion of individuals is at that point, they'll refer them to IVF or they'll put them on medication, which are amazing options.
right.
But I wonder, how many people could we set up for success by telling them all these things? How to
Mm,
eat, what you need to clean up in your bathroom, in your kitchen, that may be making it harder for you to conceive. Just setting them up for success in a way that they might not have to spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of stress on things that they could have a successful conceiving naturally if they were given the right tools. And
Hmm.
so we have this additional, I don't know, I'll call it like infrastructure issue
Yeah.
where we're not we're not catching people where we need to and giving them the right information. We're
Hmm.
actually just referring them out.
Right. And sometimes you just have to be patient for a year because your body is just adjusting to the new normal, right?
Yeah, I would say if you're coming off of birth control, give yourself a buffer time of at least 6 months
Hmm.
before starting to try to conceive. That will give you a lot of really good insight on how your body's doing and what adjustments you might need to make. Are there any nutritional deficiencies you might need to correct? A lot of the times there are. The pill in particular can leach and deplete nutrients. So
Hmm.
especially important, like if you're coming off the pill, do a workup, vitamins, minerals, see if you're low in anything, supplement accordingly.
Right.
And then I would say after that 6 months, then you're sort of in the clear to start trying and expect things to go really well.
Right.
Stats are good. After a year, 80 to 85% of couples do conceive for when both parties are healthy. So it is just being armed with the right information. If it doesn't happen in 2 cycles and you're like, something's wrong with me, it
Yep.
may not be that, but how much more stressful is it to not know anything
Yeah.
than to actually have a pretty good grasp on what's normal and what's not? And hey, if it doesn't work out by now, here's what might make the biggest difference.
Right.
This is what I'd like to get to people.
Yeah. No, I've also read about how being on birth control. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but it also how it affects your gut and
Yeah.
and thereby affects the brain because now there's new research coming out about how gut is the new brain kind of a thing, or like your gut is actually the brain.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
yeah.
Hugely connected. Yeah, a little bit on this. There is such a connection between gut health and fertility, too.
Mhm.
Everything that's good for your gut health is also good for your fertility. So, like a diet high in fiber, antioxidants, pre-probiotic foods, amazing. The gut you have a portion of your microbiome called the estrobolome that does a lot of the modification and clearing of estrogen. So when you have gut dysbiosis and you don't have this functioning optimally, you actually could be interfering with this estrogen clearance. And now you have a buildup of estrogen. We see estrogen excess in males and females.
Right.
And this is hormonal imbalance. So a lot of people throw hormone balance, hormonal imbalance. Like when you have estrogen dominating over progesterone,
Right.
luteal phase, this is estrogen excess, hormonal imbalance.
Hmm. And I think that kind of shows up as weight gain because
Yeah,
more estrogen is more fat deposition.
right,
So
right.
that's like the first because it's weight is something you people are more conscious about, and it shows up as excess weight. And but so people are more concerned about weight loss, but what they need to be more concerned is address the gut, address the underlying hormonal imbalances, what's happening there, and that'll take care of the weight. I was talking to some of my girlfriends, and they were all talking about how um, their weight gain in the last couple of months, or especially during pandemic, because everyone was indoors, and of course with a lot of uncertainty, there was stress and all that also contributing to these kind of things. And how when they addressed the gut or when they addressed the underlying issues, they started like losing weight like water. So it's very interesting how they're interrelated. Um,
Yeah,
uh, I actually want to talk a little bit about, or let you talk a little bit about, the article that you wrote. It was scientifically astute. I had to like sit down to like it was not something that I could read and I could unwind to at the end of the day because it was like, I'm not going to read this in a breeze. This is going to
yeah.
take some real time. It was like sitting and reading a whole paper. You have, out of your personal experience, you have studied your blood work in detail when you were on the pill and going off the pill. So
Yep.
tell us about the markers, the nutrition depletion, and like if it affects organs like shrinking ovaries and things like that. So yeah, I'm just going to be like an active listener for this.
Amazing. Yes, I'm actually going to pull it up so I
Mhm.
can refer to some of the big ones. I'm glad you brought this up. And yeah, it definitely wasn't light reading. But I will say, I make this caveat in the blog, but I say it here. It's a work perk to get a full blood panel. And I try to do it every quarter. So it looks like I have an excessive amount of blood work for like a healthy 20 something, which I do, but I also love testing. And I'm not saying anyone needs to be doing it this much. I don't think it financially or reasonably makes sense to do it. Um, but on at least an annual basis, we can't manage what we don't measure. I hear that thrown around a lot, but it's very, very true.
Mhm.
Um, so at least getting like a baseline from your GP when you can, as full of a panel as you can. If you're interested in particular things, getting it through a direct-to-consumer company. These are all really, really great data points to have. And it's your body, it's your health. There's so much value that comes from knowing these. So what I did, yes, as you nicely alluded to, was let's see, I graphed it from like mid 2019 to mid 2022.
Mhm.
And I had come off of the pill at the end of 2021. So one of my biggest problem areas was cortisol. And I want to talk about cortisol quickly, which is because I see it a lot,
Yeah.
like in social media right now. It's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah.
So cortisol, our stress hormone, our adrenal glands release this in response to stressful situations, emotions, healthy stressors, even like exercise. But we operate on a 24-hour pattern where when we wake up, cholesterol is the highest, and then it trends downward over the course of the day. So that being said, I see a lot of like girls doing, workouts, and it's like, this lowered my cortisol. And it's like, did you test it? Also, did you hack it? If you did test it. So if you test cortisol at like 7 a.m., right when you wake up, you run to the lab and you get it tested, it's gonna be higher than if you tested it at like 10 or 11 a.m., right? So one thing I did was I tested at the same time to make sure I was controlling for the time when you do a serum cortisol test like this was. So
Right.
huge caveat here.
Mm.
But I had tested, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a row while on the pill, and my cortisol was always in the clinically high range. So it was around, let's say, 25, 27. Top of the normal range is like 23.
Mm.
So I was in excess of that. And how did the pill impact it? So this actually, my blood work did match up to the literature, which
Mm.
says women on the pill have higher baseline cortisol levels. And yes, while this is like probably being biologically mediated by the synthetic hormones, this still, like cortisol still has biological activity.
Right.
And I felt like I was feeling the effects of consistently having higher cortisol, even if I was trying to like test, I think I was testing like 9 or 10 a.m.
Mm.
I came off the pill, and then actually I saw my next 3 tests were all clinically normal. They had dropped to the normal range and they trended downward. So it was first 22, and then it was like 18, and then it was 16.
Mm.
So this sustained over time really did show me that being on the pill was driving up my amount, probably my concentration, and interrupting with my body's ability to clear it out sufficiently every day with the synthetic hormones. So I will say I did go on the IUD. So the last, maybe I'll link it so people know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, yeah. Yo, I can link that article. Yes. Yeah.
There's like a little, you'll see, this is my blood test with an IUD
Mm.
with it lower. So luckily, I did not. I no longer have that problem. Well, actually, I got the IUD out already, but since then, I have not seen an increase in cortisol. The
Right.
other marker, actually, the other two that were obviously related to the pill in my case, again, this is kind of,
Before we,
oh,
sorry, to cut you, before we go in there, how is this increased cortisol impacting your body? Like, what is that you were doing differently because of that increased cortisol?
so it affects quite a few things. So it activates our central nervous system, that like sympathetic fight or flight. So it's a lot of like that stressful energy we associate.
Right.
But then it also tells your liver to store glucose, because it's
Mm,
like you're running away from something, you need energy for later. It can drive up inflammation levels, which is actually, yeah, that next marker, my like um, inflammatory indicator.
mm,
It can mess with your metabolism and
mm,
sleep. So that's actually linked a lot. If your cortisol is super high, you can have trouble falling asleep because it is supposed to dip quite low by the time we're getting ready for bed. So,
mm,
and then finally, of course, reproduction. So, like I mentioned at the very beginning, anytime we have this excess stress, elevated stress response, and stress coming from, a variety of different origins, it shows up as damaging to the reproductive system.
mm. Oh gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. The second one.
No, thank you for catching that. The interpretation is always crucial.
Mm,
But the next one I was looking at was HSCRP. And this one I was so high, which is sorry, let me just give you the of what it is. It's an indicator of inflammation in the body. So it's non-specific. It's not
mm,
telling you exactly what inflammation is coming from, but it's telling you inflammation is present. My readings were like the ones that are at 10 or actually above 10. It was just that the lab literally didn't read it that high. So
oh wow.
they were high. Um, and this drastically decreased as well, right from that high range, like above clinically normal to within clinically normal range once I came off the pill. So this also aligned with literature. A lot of studies have shown that women on the oral contraceptive pill had higher levels of HSCRP. Um, but I will say that I also had white blood cells tested, which is another inflammatory indicator, and all my metabolic markers, so blood sugar, cholesterol, these were all great. So what it was telling me is I wasn't having like walking around super inflamed and like all my systems were just in inflammation mode. But it was telling me the pill was influencing some kind of inflammation pathway. Maybe it was activating the liver to produce more HSCRP. But the difference is clear when I was on it and when I came off of it, because again, like I said, these proteins, they have biological activity. So even if you don't feel very different or it's not manifesting as symptoms, like off the chart, still off the chart. So it was nice for me to see that when I came off of it, it did go to clinically normal levels.
Mm,
And then let me give you, I did two more sorry, that were, I was trying to match it up with what I was seeing a lot in the research. SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. It's a hormone that our proteins attach to, and essentially that's how they circulate around the bloodstream. This was super high while I was on the pill. Again, super common for people on the oral contraceptive pill. So what this can mean is, well, it can mean a few things. It's you have like a lot more things trying to pick up your hormones, because the liver is being told to produce more of hormone carrier because you're ingesting synthetic hormones.
right.
But as far as like impact on how I felt or other kind of hormonal symptoms, I wasn't noticing anything really. It was just clear the effect that this contraceptive pill was having on my liver to drive up production of proteins such as this. And again, I saw like massive significant decrease.
Right.
I transitioned off the pill, and then onto the IUD. And then the last one I looked at was vitamin B12. So this one I was interested in because I was reading a lot of research, maybe not a lot, but there were some studies that said vitamin B12 the pill could deplete you of B12, and we need it for energy levels, nerve, DNA synthesis. It helps your body turn your food into fuel. You absolutely need this vitamin. So my levels were actually really good while I was still, and they remain that way. I mean, I do have a diet that includes animal products. I'm not vegetarian, so this was, I never really had a B12 issue, but I included this one to say it's so important to test yourself, because if I had just gone with what, people in blogs were telling me that I need this supplement and that supplement because I was on the pill, I actually would have over supplemented in the case of vitamin B12.
B12, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, vitamin D, I definitely needed, like folate, definitely need that. But there's so much to say, like your body has the answers. So if there is something to be supplementing in or deficient, even though like research shows this trend, test yourself. Because I actually this wasn't actually an issue biomarker for me coming off the pill. My levels actually kind of remained consistent, even
Right.
with you do, yeah.
Hmm. When you were talking about inflammation, I was just thinking about the rise in inflammatory diseases these days. And most of them are due to unknown causes, right? Like they don't know. Like, yeah, of course, there's a family history of MS or some kind of spondylitis, arthritis, and rheumatoid issues. But a lot of women, I know, like some friends or friends of friends who don't have a family history, don't have any like medical history as well, just the occasional flu and stuff. But they have started developing inflammatory disorders, like some friends of mine who are actually Indians, where we have not seen these kind of inflammatory disorders. They're not very that's not on top of the list when you
Yeah,
put the South Asian, when you look at the South Asian race. But
right.
maybe a change in the environment, change in the weather and the diet, and maybe the. So, do you think that the pill could also have triggered this when they were on it, and then kind of um, even if they came off the pill, it still they still have those inflammatory disorders because of that.
That's such an interesting question. And they were living in the US.
They are in the US now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It wouldn't be right for me to say if I think so or not, but because of exactly what you were saying, the environment that they're in, the food that they're exposed to,
Right.
hormonal contraceptive. I mean, we really are creating a perfect storm in
Mm,
our body
right.
if we're not proactively addressing all of these different points of disruption.
Right.
So, be it environmental, be it dietary, be it hormonal. I mean, maybe it is possible for them to pinpoint, but I believe strongly that it's nothing happens in a vacuum. So
Yeah.
everything we do, everything we eat, everything we're exposed to, it plays a role in our overall health. So I would not be surprised at all if it was
Mhm.
related to some capacity.
Yeah, like I never, like I remember she and I were talking about it. And we don't have a family history of this
Mhm.
particular condition, like
Yeah,
diabetes. Yeah, I get it. Like heart, hypertension. Yes,
yeah,
definitely. But it's like really this, and like we were just tracing our history, and I was like, no, I don't think we have a family history. And then I
yeah,
was like, are you on some kind of steroids or something for health related stuff? And she was like, no, now I am, because I've been diagnosed with early rheumatoid, I don't remember if it was arthritis or some form of inflammation. And I was pretty surprised. But I just, like, now that you're talking to me about these inflammatory responses, I didn't know if she was on and off, or off the pill. So yeah, that could be another point that we could have discussed at this point.
right. Because we can't change our DNA, but I'm sure you've seen, the concept of epigenetics or nutrigenomics, where we can influence how it's expressed based on
Mm,
how we're
right.
living, how we're eating, what we're exposed to. Your genome's not changing, but essentially the output of how the book of your genome is being read can
Hmm.
be changed. So autoimmune stuff like that, it's so tricky.
Right, right. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the physical? You made a point about that the pill can actually shrink ovaries and things like that. I think this is a big point to be addressed in the sense that they can just go off the face value of this and be like, oh, pill is going to affect your ovaries. So is that true or what is this?
Yeah, it is. It is true. However, again, I'm never on a mission to scare anybody. I was on the pill for almost a decade.
Hmm.
Um, Things like the pill, the shot, the forms of hormonal contraception that actually suppress ovarian function,
Hmm.
yes, they can, reduce the size. Obviously, they're influencing or any eggs being ovulated. Um, and we are turning that off for, however long we decide to. So all that being said, we do know it's reversible. So I wouldn't like stress. However, it again is a very good piece of information to know when you're making decisions for your own health.
Right.
Even with, because I know you mentioned the IUD, just to like throw this in there too,
Hmm.
advertised as super localized. And it's not like the pill where you have to ingest it and then it goes into your whole bloodstream and can affect a bunch of things. These hormones just stay right in your uterus where they're supposed to. And like we know that's not true either. Most it's true, absolutely. Like it's a lot more localized than the pill or something that's injected. But it's just not how the human body works. These hormones do get out and they can, cause symptoms and they can have an effect. I loved the IUD when I had it, but I did hit a point where I was just like, I want my monthly report card on how my health is doing.
Yeah.
And I think everyone needs to arrive at that moment in
Yeah.
on their own. But yeah, just so much I'm learning that I wish I had been told
Yeah.
prior to going on all these, different forms of birth control.
In that book, in the flow, she talks about how you have vital signs when you go to a doctor's clinic. They check the vital signs,
Yeah.
and a menstrual period is actually one of the vital signs. When be like, hey, you're this month, you're okay.
You can learn so much.
Right.
It's crazy. It's literally a report card.
Yeah.
Like every month.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you rightly put it, it's a report
Yeah.
card. We give you a clean bill of health, or even if it's not a clean bill, it's an easy way to tell that, hey, I think there's something wrong. You did something wrong this month. You didn't take care of yourself. So just
Yeah.
take care of yourself. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Right.
Yeah. Especially when we can draw, certain things that you're seeing in your cycle to specific, be it a nutrient deficiency, be it something related to your lifestyle, be it a supplement that you should start taking. Like we can do that. They can actually draw lines between symptoms and solutions. It's fascinating.
Right. Like I ever since I started reading about all these things the last couple of years, I feel like a whole chunk of my time is it's not easy being conscious. And of course, you have to draw a line sometimes because I don't want to be that overly controlling person and be like,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to try my best to do what I can.
Yeah.
But there's only so much you can do,
Hmm.
with this. Um, because we're talking about contraceptives, is this all like so? This all happens when you take a hormonal pill or a shot or an IUD. What about the non-hormonal options that are being available? Because how does that work? Like, what are the? Is it the same or is it?
So, I mean, maybe as expected, they fare a bit better. So, in that study I was referencing, where they looked at, time to conception coming off
Mm,
of certain contraceptives,
right.
not hormonal, which in this case was condom use, um, time to conceive was on average 4 months. Which, if you think there's a 20 to 25% chance every month, 4 months matches that perfectly.
Mm,
So, there actually was no time, no delay in return to fertility, non-hormonal. Copper IUD, that is non-hormonal. I know that there is some concern with like heavier periods.
mm,
If you get the copper IUD, this can absolutely happen. However, that does tend to decrease after 2 years post-insertion. It's also a bit larger, so my gynecologist actually refused to give it to me because it was bigger. I did specifically ask for the copper IUD and I didn't get it, but
Yeah. And also, you don't get an anesthetic shot before you
oh no.
go to it, right? Like women are known to endure pain, so
Oh, I know, right? A whole nother discussion. And I actually luckily did not have an IUD horror story, aside from the fact that I asked for one that I didn't end up getting. Um, which actually she was mid procedure was like, oh, actually, I'm not going to give you this one. And at that point, I was just like, fine, do the other one, like get it over with.
God.
So, I mean, to be a woman, but it's just like kind of crazy.
Oh gosh. Um, the last topic before I have some fun questions. This is what are the essentials when planning to conceive, like diet and I know we've touched upon this, but
Yeah.
you mentioned that there are several points that you would like to talk about, and if we can probably like categorize them, and so that they're all under one roof for our viewers.
Yes, I'd love to. So we'll start with diet because you're right, we did talk about that. So mainly eating whole foods, foods from the earth, so high quality proteins, things like bone broth and chicken and Greek yogurt. This is wonderful. Fish, shellfish. Shellfish have like obscenely high nutrient per volume servings of critical fertility nutrients like zinc. So bivalve shellfish, so mussels, oysters, shellfish, all those things are very wonderful. Full fat dairy. Dairy's tough because not everyone can tolerate it well.
Right.
But the literature has shown that full fat dairy, as opposed to low fat or no fat dairy, has better fertility outcomes. So if you can tolerate dairy, no symptoms, reach for the full fat dairy, instead of the low fat or the no fat version, because it's actually going to benefit you a bit more. Lots of vegetables because we need antioxidants, we need fiber. Same with fruits. So anything colorful is going to have a really high antioxidant profile. Whole grains, this is again another source of fiber. Keeping processed food, packaged food to a minimum, obviously not avoiding these completely. And then also alcohol. Unfortunately, this one is not the best for our reproductive system. So I'm aiming, it took me a while to get to the point where I was ready to like start really cutting it out, but I'm trying to keep it at around like 1 to 2 times per week, which is, I'm definitely like, oh, I feel a lot better now. Maybe I'm just getting older. As far as supplements, again, my big recommendation here is to start testing. So get some analyses, see where you are, see what you're deficient in. That will really help you target supplementation without overtaking something that you actually might not need. That being said, across the board, I have seen fertility benefits strongly, so reproductive health, PMS, menstrual cycle benefits come from omega-3 supplementation, magnesium, and vitamin D3. Most people are not getting enough of these. That's why it's pretty safe, it's well researched, it's pretty good at general advice to add these into the mix if you haven't already, or if you just can't get to testing yet. These are really advisable. For the environment, I know you said it's a lot. It can feel very overwhelming, which is very true. So I like to teach what goes in your body is the most important. Then what goes on it is second important. And then what's around you is the next up. And this can happen over a period of like months to years, where you're slowly replacing everything that you come into the most contact with, because that's going to make the most difference. So what's going in your body? This is water. So getting a water purifier, if you don't have one already, like mine is cheap. It was like $30 on Amazon. It's called a Life Straw, and it filters out like the highest degree of any endocrine disrupting chemical that I see in the market for, that price point. So I really like that.
Again, what is it called?
Life Straw.
Life Straw. Okay.
Yeah. So I can send you this link too.
Yeah.
And then food. So there's this big like organic and non-organic debate. Obviously, any fruit and vegetable is better than none. So that's number one. If you're not eating any, start with conventional. That's already a step in the right direction. If you normally eat fruits and vegetables and you're available to level up, organic produce does not use glyphosate, which is probably, it's really well researched. It has directly harmful effects on fertility, reproductive health. So that's why, if you can, choosing organic produce is, that next tier of what you could be doing. Around, this is like, what products are you using on your body the most? So lotion, cosmetics, hair products, all of these things that are pretty much in your bathroom, in the shower. Do an audit of those. Don't throw them all out right away.
Yeah.
When you come time to replace, there are a few. The EWG is, definitely controversial, but I really do love their database because it will filter out any potential dangerous chemical in a product. So it's called the Skin Deep database, I believe, and you can search a product and it'll rate it essentially. So I actually do like to utilize that. And then so house plants are really good air purifiers. Buying an air purifier, if you live in a city like we do, that's usually a good idea. And then what you cook with, if it's wood or if it's plastic, unfortunately, those non-stick pans, as great as they are typically coated in endocrine disrupting chemicals. So cast iron, stainless steel, that's going to be the way to go. Same thing with preserving your food. Try to do glass, try to do stainless steel, drinking out of glass.
Right.
Some of my best recommendations. So these are just like small ways to reduce cumulative exposure over time. Contraceptives, if you're on contraceptives or you're thinking about coming off of them, implementing that buffer time. And then on testing, I didn't want to leave anyone high and dry on what they should look for. Some of the biggest things would be metabolic. So fasting blood sugar, HbA1c, insulin. Insulin's a hormone. People forget about that.
Yeah.
So if you have super high insulin or insulin resistance, that is hormonal imbalance. So you would want to address that with your doctor. Also thyroid. Get a thyroid panel if you can. If you're a woman of reproductive age, a lot of fertility issues are linked to thyroid problems. So you would want to address that if that's you. Hormonal. You could do a hormonal workup, so things like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, SHBG, what I showed, DHEAS. This is just going to give you a good baseline for how you're doing hormonally. Same thing with vitamins and minerals. This is really helpful to figure out, are you deficient in anything? Are you deficient in key fertility nutrients? Because if you are, you'd want to start supplementing and correcting that now. Folate, obviously a really big one. Pretty much everyone knows folate, folic acid.
Folic acid is it's on everything these days, which is good. Yeah.
Which is good, right? And we are, our food is fortified with folic acid. Yeah. So, but again, no, you definitely need higher amounts of this prenatally. Homocysteine can help you detect folate deficiency. It's really related to B12, so testing your B12 too. Vitamin D, iron. A lot of women are iron deficient.
Right.
So that could be a really important mineral to start getting more of. Zinc. So zinc is really tied to menstrual health. People with PCOS tend to have lower levels of zinc already. So supplementing with zinc is really beneficial. Same with selenium and iodine. So really tied to thyroid health too.
Right.
It's a lot, but they can really tell you a lot about how you're doing.
Right. Right. As simple as just like iodine is in most salt products. So just having salt with iodine.
No, if you're using like fancier like rock salt,
pink salt,
not fortified with the iodine. So you'd want to make sure like seaweed, or you could get like seasoning that's iodine rich. I think it's like dulse seasoning. I just like don't even taste it. I just sprinkle it on my food. It's just like extra iodine. And then I do want to mention, lastly, fertility AMH. People test anti-Müllerian hormone a lot, which is good for some reasons, because what it's telling you is your ovarian reserve. However, I will say that in the literature, a low AMH does not mean low fertility. Lower AMH levels does not impact your chance of healthy conception or how long it will take you to conceive. People can conceive with lower AMH levels the exact same rate as people with higher AMH. Low vitamin D can cause you to have low levels of AMH, so you might have a deficiency you need to correct that's tied to this marker.
Wow.
Also, you have like every cycle, you have a batch of eggs essentially developing, and the winner is the one that gets ovulated, and that can change. So one cycle you test, maybe not as many eggs were developing as they would the next month, but you have that one AMH number in your head, and AMH can increase. So you can live in a fertility supportive way and test again. And it's not like the AMH level you get, you're locked in for life. Like that's your egg reserve, that's it. You're doomed. Um, I think there's so much empowerment for women to be able to test AMH early on, like even in their early 20s. But if it's not explained to you that way, like it's really useful. It's going to let doctors know how many eggs they could retrieve from you if you were to do like a egg retrieval cycle. But it's not, low AMH is not low fertility. You need to stress out. So I always like to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like you just go with the face value of, oh, this levels are low, so that means this is the reason why. But
Yeah.
we were talking about how the gut health, and when, like, just when you look at weight gain, you just think it's just you've eaten unhealthily and you're not able to lose, but the underlying cause is hormonal or your gut related. So this is very similar. It's surprising how vitamin D3 is so essential for so many aspects of anybody's health. It's not just reproductive. There's like bone health, bone density, uh,
Yeah.
like mental health. I'm like, wow, I'm just popping vitamins day in and day out every
Oh
day.
my God, me too. I have, that's one that I won't live without is vitamin D3. Like in Boston, come on, we're not making D3
D3 at all, yeah.
right now.
There was actually one question which I wanted to ask. We were talking about fertility and the the whole news about it. There's a thing that women are losing their fertility, the ability of fertilization quite early these days. But I read this interesting point somewhere that it's also because they're attaining puberty earlier when compared to, say, 20 years ago. Do
Yeah.
you think it's because they're attaining puberty, they're also, entering premenopausal, menopausal age, menopausal time a bit earlier in life? Do you think there is a correlation there? I thought it was a very interesting point because nobody talks about that. They
No.
just talk about that gradual, drastic reduction in the rates, but they're also forgetting that they're attaining puberty earlier. But I don't know if there is a correlation.
Mm, I don't know either. I will say, from what I know now, age at menopause is really primarily mediated by genetics. I think like 80% of it, like that timing, can be attributed to your genetics. However, that being said, I also read that too, where are we on average experiencing rates of puberty happening at younger ages?
Hmm.
Yes. And I mean, I don't have data on this, but would I guess that it's our diet, that it's our exposures to,
Right.
they call it endocrine disrupting for a reason. I mean, a
Right.
lot of the things mimic estrogen, mimic
Mm.
testosterone. Like I could see a hypothesis where, you interact with enough of these, your body's going to think it's ready to start puberty. Like we are influencing hormonal experiences due to being in contact with xenoestrogens or things that impact hormonal pathways or compete with our hormonal receptors. I mean, again, I don't have like hard data on this, but would I venture to say that this is more serious than we're led to believe? Yeah, I would.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point. Like, maybe that's a good point you made. That it's just the nature versus nurture thing. There's so much of.
Yeah,
endocrine disrupting factors out there. That is, mm,
totally.
gosh. Um, I do have many questions, but I'm going to stop with this here because I have some fun questions. But you viewers, if you want to learn more about these topics, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love to have Michelle again. You can even let us know. You can read through her blog and let us know if there were any topics that you would want her to talk about. Um, but yeah, before I wrap, I have the small segment called Dig Deep. Um, and I have four questions for you.
Ooh.
Nothing to do exactly with what we spoke, but pretty much in the same circuit. My first question to you is: how do you see the intersection of your scientific expertise with broader societal issues?
Ooh, broader societal issues.
Mm,
Oh, that's huge. I have a couple answers.
okay.
Um, one, like from a very reproductive justice lens, like I currently donate to and support a lot of reproductive justice causes because I believe very strongly that there is massive injustice, there's massive racism in like medicine in general, fertility especially.
Mm,
And so this fight is very intersectional.
mm,
So I will say that. And then also, we are experiencing so much, like a huge mental health crisis.
right.
This topic, as you said in the beginning, very sensitive, very anxiety inducing for many people. So my work is very much to be steeped in how can I educate, but also give a lot of peace, give a lot of sovereignty for someone, also empower them without making them feel like, oh, the world is burning, there's no point, like I'm doomed. Like that's very much not the vibe.
Right.
So trying to just present everything in a way that's very empowering to have on one hand stories that absolutely need to be shared. Like I think people sharing the dark side of their fertility journey is very necessary and those stories need to be told. And
Right.
that's a beautiful thing. I'm happy to see more of that. Though on the other hand, I see a lot of people internalize that and think truly for no concrete reason that they're going to struggle, that something's wrong with them and they don't know what to do. They're going to have a lot of trouble getting pregnant. And you need to be able to have enough inside of you already that knows concrete information, but also get it in a way that makes you feel good about the whole thing and that you don't internalize a lot of things that might make you feel scared or anxious.
Mm,
That's out there.
that's a very important point because I think we've all like me inclusive, we've got all gone through it. You just like look at blanket statements being made, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll have to go through this, or
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, I have cancer. Like, oh gosh, anything you open these days is cancer. So
Yeah.
the fear is real. Um, my next question: curiosity or passion? What's your pick?
Oh, like fertility?
No, anything like
Oh, anything. Oh,
curiosity or passion. What is your pick?
that is so hard. I thought you were asking me about this because I was like, it's both.
Uh,
Um,
it could be any. Like you could pick and apply it to
yeah.
any area.
No. I see the question. I think passion might have to come for. I think a general curiosity is amazing,
Okay.
but I truly like. For instance, I'm super passionate about reproductive health. I don't know why. I just am, and
Mm,
that's what makes me so capable of being insatiably curious
mm,
about it. Like to spend all these hours researching, to like learn something new every day,
yeah.
to digest all these webinars and like put myself in all these spaces where I can learn from other people. Like that, I couldn't be that curious if I wasn't at least a little bit passionate.
Yeah.
But general curiosity is very important.
Hmm. What does failure mean to you?
I love this. I've worked really hard to make it mean absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Because what is failure really? I think it's just how it makes us feel. Because I've done things that like haven't worked out. but I don't feel like I failed because
Mm,
I still did them, you know? So it's like, oh, if I start this business and I don't make $10,000 in the first year, I failed. Like, says who?
yeah.
Says who? The fact that, like, no, I sure as heck didn't. But do I show up online relatively consistently? I feel like I provide content and value and educate people here and there. Like, that to me can't be failing. Um,
Mm,
and I never see anything as like not ideal as a failure. I think it really just comes down to how we define failure.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's a very relative.
yeah,
That's
it's
why I love asking this question. Yeah.
yeah. Like I mean, I people could look at things I've done probably and be like, oh no, she failed, and I'd be like, did I? Because by whose standard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good question.
My last question, and it's a Boston question. Would you rather navigate through Boston's rush hour traffic or try finding parking at Fenway Park on a given
Anyway,
day?
I knew you were gonna say that. Oh my god.
I have an answer for this too, but I'll wait for yours.
Well, I'm a commuter. Let me say this. I have never owned a car in Boston, but you think that'd be an out. It's not an out because have you ever tried to get on the D line when there's a Red Sox game? Oh, no, no, no. Or during rush hour? Ah, okay. Rush hour.
Okay.
What's yours?
I was actually going to say neither. I'll take the green line, but yeah, the trains are packed. But at least I know that I don't have to leave 3 hours in advance.
That is true. I have one of my best friends lives in Fenway, and I have to check the schedule. And if I'm like, I'm walking there, I'm doing the 40-minute walk to Fenway. If there's a game because I can't.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to start now, right? Like in a few
Yeah,
days,
it's
definitely. So
started.
green lines are going to be packed. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. This was very informative. I know we touched upon a lot of sensitive topics, and I'm sure there are so many things that we can dive deep into. But I just wanted to get a feel of what's out there, and like there's so much of misinformation in this area of science, and I think you did a great job of talking about the importance of personalization and like just testing yourself first to see and not get and not internalizing the blanket statements that are made. I think they are such good takeaway points from the end of this podcast. So like I said, if the viewers want more information, we actually have a wealth of information. I'm going to link Michelle's blogs to in the description, and you're on Twitter, right? On X.
No, I'm actually only come find me on LinkedIn. That's the only
That's great. That's
only
great.
social media I have for now.
Okay, so I'm gonna link that your LinkedIn information as
Perfect.
well, so you can reach out to her. And I know her blog is pretty interactive, so you can get in touch with her if you want to talk to her about nutrition and things like that. So thank you once again, and I hope stay curious and yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
yeah, it was fun for me as well. Thank you.